I just stood there. My heart was racing, but my face, completely blank. I wasn't about to give him the reaction he wanted. Mr. Carter leaned against his desk, arms crossed, that stupid smirk plastered on his face. "You're fired," he said, like it was the easiest thing in the world. Like it wasn't my whole job, my stability, my time that he was tossing away in front of everyone. The office went silent. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. Nobody spoke. They just stared, waiting to see if I'd cry, if I'd break down, if I'd beg. Not a chance. I swallowed hard, forcing my hands to relax. They were balled up so tight my nails dug into my palms. My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. I just stared at him, then slowly nodded. Carter looked almost disappointed, like he wanted me to fight back just so he could enjoy shutting me down again. "You can pack up your things," he added, waving me off like I was some intern who had messed up the coffee order. I blinked, just once. I thought about all the late nights, the weekends I gave up, the times I fixed his mistakes and never got credit. And now, just like that, he was tossing me aside in front of the whole team, like I meant nothing. Fine. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and picked up my bag. My steps were steady, heels clicking against the tile as I headed for the door. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't need their pity. But right as I reached the exit, I paused, just for a second. Then, without turning around, I whispered under my breath, just loud enough for myself to hear, "Big mistake." Because what Carter didn't know, this wasn't over. Not even close. I sat at my desk, staring at the empty space where my nameplate used to be. It was funny, in a messed up way. 3 years of my life gone in an instant, just like that. I had given everything to this company. Every late night, every weekend, every moment where I put their needs above my own. I answered emails at midnight, fixed problems that weren't even mine, and covered for Carter more times than I could count. And for what? A public humiliation? A cold, emotionless dismissal like I was nothing? I replayed the moment over and over in my head. His smirk. That satisfied look in his eyes. He had enjoyed it, watching me stand there helpless while everyone else stayed silent. He didn't even have the decency to pull me aside. No explanation, no warning, just a final act of power, as if he wanted to remind me that he could do whatever he wanted. And I let him. I just stood there, nodded, and walked out like a good little employee. My stomach twisted at the thought. I should have said something, should have called him out in front of everyone. But deep down, I knew words wouldn't have mattered. Carter had already made up his mind. He wanted me gone, and nothing I said would have changed that. But actions? Actions could change everything. I took a slow breath, gripping the strap of my bag a little tighter. He thought I was done, that I would just disappear quietly and struggle to rebuild my life while he carried on without a second thought. He had no idea who he was messing with. I wasn't just another employee. I wasn't some powerless girl he could throw away, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let this slide. Not after everything I had done for this place. Not after the way he smiled, enjoying every second of my downfall. He had no clue what was coming. But soon he would. Carter thought he had all the power. That was his first mistake. He never looked beyond the surface. To him, I was just another employee, someone he could get rid of without a second thought. He never questioned why I never panicked about losing my job, why I didn't beg for another chance. He assumed I was powerless. But what he never bothered to check. I wasn't just working here. I owned a piece of this company. My uncle built this place from the ground up. He was the genius behind it, the reason it became successful in the first place. Carter was just the guy who took over when my uncle stepped down. He walked around like he was some self-made businessman, but the truth, he was just playing boss while living off someone else's legacy. And me? I wasn't just some worker climbing the corporate ladder, I was a silent partner. My uncle left me shares, more than enough to have a say in what happened here, but I never used them, never bragged about them, because I didn't need to. I wanted to prove I could make it on my own. Carter never saw me as a threat. Maybe because I was young, maybe because I wasn't the type to shove my success in people's faces. He underestimated me, treated me like I was disposable. And that was his second mistake. Because now, I was the one with the real power. While he sat in his fancy office thinking he had won, I was already making my next move. The board had no idea about the mess he had created behind closed doors, the poor decisions, the reckless spending, the deals that were about to ruin this company. But I knew, and soon they would too. Carter thought he had gotten rid of me, that I'd walk away, humiliated and defeated. But the truth, I was never just an employee. And now he was about to learn exactly who he had been messing with. I walked out of that office with my back straight and my head high. Not because I wasn't hurt, I was. Not because I wasn't angry, I definitely was. But because I refused to let Carter see even a flicker of weakness. He thought he had won. He thought I was just going to disappear. He had no idea. The second I stepped out of that building, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what he was about to lose. I didn't waste time. I knew exactly where to start. The board members, the ones who actually had power over this company, needed to hear the truth. And luckily for me, I had plenty of it. So I reached out, quietly, carefully. One by one, I arranged private meetings, presenting them with hard facts. Not opinions, not emotions. Facts. The reckless spending, the failed deals, the contracts he mishandled. All the mistakes he covered up while taking credit for everyone else's work. At first, some of them were skeptical. Carter was good at pretending he had everything under control, but the numbers didn't lie. When I laid everything out in black and white, they started to listen. One of them leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "If this continues, the company won't survive another year," he muttered. Exactly. By the time I was done, the board wasn't just concerned, they were furious. Carter had been playing boss while running the company into the ground, and they were the ones who would have to answer for it. That realization changed everything. Meanwhile, Carter carried on, completely unaware. He probably thought I was sitting at home, crying over my lost job. He had no clue that I was already pulling the strings behind his back. He fired me thinking he had gotten rid of a problem. But in reality, he had just handed me the perfect opportunity to end him. A week later, the board called an emergency meeting. Carter had no idea what was coming. I watched from my seat as he strolled in, his usual smugness on full display. He adjusted his cufflinks, flashed his fake business smile, and took his place at the head of the table like he owned the world. "All right, let's get this over with," he said, leaning back in his chair. The chairman cleared his throat. "We have serious matters to discuss regarding the company's future." Carter barely listened. He thought he was untouchable. "Come on, we're doing fine," he chuckled. "Let's not waste time." The chairman didn't smile. He folded his hands, his expression unreadable. "There will be a leadership change." Silence. Carter blinked, then let out a short, amused laugh. "Leadership change," he repeated. "Who's replacing me?" His voice dripped with arrogance as if the idea itself was ridiculous. I stood up. Calm. Steady. Ready. "I am." The room stayed still. No one spoke. But Carter? He just stared at me, his expression frozen in disbelief. Then, like it was some kind of joke, he laughed. "You!" he scoffed. "You got to be kidding me." I wasn't. The chairman slid a file across the table. "We've reviewed everything. Your financial mismanagement, poor leadership, reckless decisions. The board has voted. Effective immediately, you're removed as CEO." His smirk faltered. His fingers twitched against the table. "This is absurd," he snapped. "You can't do this." But we could. I could. I met his eyes, letting it sink in. "You fired me without a second thought," I said quietly. "You didn't even know who you were messing with." His breathing grew heavy, his confidence cracking. "You can't just take my place," he muttered, shaking his head. I tilted mine. "Actually, I can. I own a significant portion of this company. The board trusts me more than they ever trusted you. And now," I leaned forward slightly, "you're out." For the first time, Carter had nothing to say. No comeback, no smirk, just pure stunned silence. And I stood there, taking in the moment. Because this was my victory. Silence. For the first time since I had known Carter, he was speechless. His eyes widened, his smirk vanished, and for a split second I saw something I never thought I'd see on his face. Fear. You can't do this," he stammered, his voice quieter now, like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Oh, but I can." I slid the official documents across the table, watching as his hands hovered over them, unsure whether to pick them up or shove them away. He finally grabbed them, his fingers trembling slightly as he scanned the words. His face paled with every line he read. "I own 40% of this company," I continued, keeping my voice steady, controlled. "And the board just voted you out." He shook his head, flipping through the pages like he'd somehow find a mistake, some loophole to cling to. But there wasn't one. It was all right there, in black and white. His reign was over. "No," he muttered, his breathing uneven. This is ridiculous." He lifted his gaze, desperation creeping into his expression. "You don't have the experience. The board would never—" "They already did." I gestured toward the men and women sitting around the table, all of them watching him with unreadable expressions. Not one of them spoke up for him. Not one defended him. That's when it hit him. He was alone. The same people who used to nod along to his every word were now avoiding his eyes. The same board members who once feared his temper had just pulled the rug out from under him. "You brought this on yourself, Carter," I said, folding my arms. "You ran this company into the ground. You wasted money, ignored warnings, made reckless decisions and treated the people under you like they were nothing." I leaned in slightly. "Like I was nothing." His jaw clenched. "This company was fine before you started meddling," he spat. I let out a small laugh. "No, Carter. This company was surviving in spite of you." I straightened, my voice calm but firm. "Now it's time for it to actually thrive." He slammed the documents onto the table. "I won't accept this." "You don't have a choice." The chairman finally spoke, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You're done here." Carter's chest rose and fell rapidly, his mind racing for a way out. But there was no way out. He had already lost. I watched him, waiting for the final moment when reality would settle in. And then I saw it, the defeat in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged just slightly. He knew. He stood abruptly, pushing back his chair so hard it nearly toppled over. "You'll regret this," he hissed. I tilted my head. "No, Carter, you will." And with that, his downfall was complete. Carter wasn't the type to go down quietly. The moment reality hit him, he exploded. His chair scraped against the floor as he shot up, fists clenched, face burning red. "This is a joke," he growled, slamming his palm on the table. "You think you can just take this from me?" I didn't flinch. "I didn't take anything, Carter. You lost it." That only made him angrier. "I built this company," he snapped, his voice sharp, desperate. "I've given my life to this place." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny. I could have sworn you spent most of your time taking credit for other people's work, wasting money and making backdoor deals that nearly sank us." His nostrils flared. "This isn't over," he spat. "I'll fight this. I'll take you to court. The chairman cut him off, his voice calm but final. "The decision is made. The documents are legal. The votes are in." He nodded toward the doorway. I turned just in time to see 2 security guards step inside. Carter's breathing turned shallow as he followed my gaze. "You're kidding me." No one said a word. The security guards didn't move yet, giving him the chance to leave with whatever dignity he had left. But Carter never knew when to stop. He turned back to the board, searching their faces for support. "You're all making a mistake," he barked. "She doesn't have what it takes to run this company." No one defended him, not the chairman, not the executives who used to nod at his every word, not even his assistant. I glanced at her, the same woman who used to roll her eyes when I asked for reports, who used to giggle at Carter's cruel jokes. Now, she was by his desk, shoving his things into a cardboard box, her face blank. That must have stung the most. Carter turned back to me, chest heaving. "You think you've won," he sneered. "You'll fail. This company will burn under your leadership." I tilted my head, keeping my voice steady. "I guess we'll find out." His hands curled into fists. For a second, I almost thought he'd lunge across the table, but then the guards finally stepped forward. "Sir," one of them said, "it's time to go." Carter stood there, shaking, still unable to accept it. But there was nothing left to argue, no power left to hold on to. He had lost. Without another word, he yanked his box from his assistant's hands, stormed past the guards, and marched toward the door. I didn't look away. I wanted to see the exact moment he stepped out. Because the second he did, this company was finally mine. He walked past me, his shoulders stiff, his grip on the cardboard box so tight his knuckles turned white. I could feel the anger radiating off him, the humiliation of losing everything in front of the people who once feared him. I waited until he was close enough, then leaned in, my voice just loud enough for him to hear. "Next time, think before you humiliate someone." His entire body tensed. He turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see the fire in his eyes. But there was nothing he could say, nothing he could do. I had won. The mighty boss? Now just another jobless man. The office was silent. No one moved. No one dared to make a sound as Carter stomped toward the exit. I could hear his heavy breathing, the frustration in every step he took. His whole world had just crumbled, and he had no choice but to walk away. I didn't look away. Not for a second. I wanted to see him leave. I wanted him to feel this moment. His assistant stood by his desk, watching as security escorted him out. She didn't speak. She didn't rush to help him. She just stood there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The same woman who used to smirk when Carter mocked me was now watching her boss get thrown out like yesterday's trash. Poetic, wasn't it? Carter reached the door, hesitated for half a second, then shoved it open so hard it banged against the wall. He stormed out, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. The second the door shut behind him, I turned back to the room. All eyes were on me. I could see the shift happening in real time. The same people who once dismissed me, who once overlooked me, were now seeing me as the one in charge. The power that Carter had clung to for years. It was mine now. I took a deep breath, then faced the board. "Shall we get to work?" A few hesitant nods. Then, one by one, they straightened in their seats, ready to listen, ready to follow me. I glanced back at Carter's empty chair, the symbol of everything he had lost. He thought firing me was the end of my story, but it was only the beginning. I took my seat at the head of the table, the same chair Carter had occupied for years, the same chair from which he had ruled over this company, looking down on the people beneath him. Only now, he was gone, and I was the one sitting here. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the people who once barely acknowledged me, the ones who had nodded along with Carter's every word, laughed at his jokes, followed his orders without question. Now, they sat straighter. Their eyes were filled with something I had never seen before when they looked at me. Respect. It was strange. Just days ago, I was nothing more than an employee to them. Someone who worked hard, but never hard enough to be seen. Someone who gave everything to this company, only to be tossed aside like I was replaceable. But I wasn't. And today proved it. "Shall we begin?" I said, keeping my voice steady, controlled. A few exchanged glances, as if still trying to process the change, but one by one they nodded, not reluctantly, not out of fear, but because they finally realized I belonged here. The meeting began. Discussions, decisions, plans. things Carter had always dismissed or handled recklessly. But now, every voice mattered, every concern was heard, and most importantly, the company finally had a leader who cared. I wasn't here to be a dictator. I wasn't here to rule with fear the way Carter had. I was here to make this place better. The meeting ended smoothly. People left the room still a little unsure, still adjusting to this shift in power. But I could feel it already. Things were changing. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. I had done it. I had taken back what was mine. A small smile tugged at my lips as I glanced at the empty space where Carter had sat. He thought he was untouchable. He thought firing me would be the end of my career, that I would just disappear, humiliated, powerless. Instead, I took everything from him, his power, his position, his title. And now, he was just another name in the long list of people who underestimated me. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, letting it sink in. This was my company now, and the best part? I was only getting started.